You recall that on Monday this week, Justice Lifo of the Federal High Court sitting in Abuja made an order in his judgment directed at INEC, asking INEC to delist, to deregister the names of ADC and the other political parties that were listed in the suit. Less than 24 hours after that judgment, the Court of Appeal, sitting in the same Abuja, at the headquarters of the court, has given an order for the suspension of the implementation of that judgment of Honorable Justice Lifo. In this video, we look at what the justices of the Court of Appeal said to Justice Lifo. We also look at the implication of the intervention of the appellate court. We begin by looking at what transpired in court on Tuesday. At the hearing of the court, that's the Court of Appeal, Abuja Division, INEC, through its counsel, Haliru Mohammed, urged the Court of Appeal to stay execution of the judgment of Justice Lifo. Once judgment is delivered, it is expected that it should be implemented almost immediately. It takes immediate effect, judgments of courts. So if you don't want it to take immediate effect, what you do is to file a motion for stay of execution. That is what happened here, asking for stay of execution of the judgment of the trial court. He told the court that INEC was shocked by the decision of the trial court and that INEC only became aware of the judgment through media reports. This is supposed to be a counsel in the matter because INEC is a party, principal party in the matter. So he's saying that INEC was not aware of the date of the judgment. In his exact words, quote, "We were not aware of any notice from Justice Lifo's court regarding the delivery of the judgment. We only saw it as breaking news in the media." That's unacceptable. That's not the usual practice. The usual practice is when judgment is ready, parties should be notified of the date for the judgment. If you are in court when the date is given for judgment, maybe after adoption of final written addresses, the judge says, from my diary, I can deliver this matter in 1 month. So a date is given. Everybody goes home. So the registrar does not need to send a new date to the lawyers because everybody had heard it in court. But in this case, it is not so. From what he's saying, parties were not aware of the dates, especially INEC. And so they had expected to be served with notice of the new dates, notice of the date for judgment. Counsel here is saying that INEC was not served with any such notice and that they got to hear about the judgment of Honorable Justice Lifo through media reports. Okay, for that reason, he aligned himself with the other lawyers in the matter and prayed the Court of Appeal to stay execution of the judgment. On his part, counsel to ADC Shuaibu Aruwa, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, told the Court of Appeal that Justice Lifo proceeded to deliver judgment in his court despite the subsisting order of the court. Remember, in our last video, we displayed the order of the court which said, stay further proceedings in the matter. Hold on, don't proceed, don't do anything until we determine the appeal that is pending before us. So this counsel is saying that Justice Lifo proceeded to deliver judgment despite the pendency of that order of the Court of Appeal. He then prayed the court to stay execution of the judgment and allow the affected parties to go about their political activities in the build-up to the 2027 election. The judge, let's look at the ruling reacting to the request, the presiding justice of the panel. Okay, this is Court of Appeal. So Court of Appeal, they sit 3 justices, to hear matters. Maximum will be 5. But to have the quorum, the minimum is 3. So in this matter, 3 justices sat, and the presiding justice, that is the most senior justice among the 3. His name, Justice A. Mohammed. He described Justice Lifo's conduct as what? Judicial impertinence. He's basically saying, well, Lord Justice Lifo, you were not patient. You should have patiently waited for us because we had given an order suspending further proceedings. So your action amounts to judicial impertinence. The appellate judges further described Justice Lifu's action as a breach of the Court of Appeal's jurisdiction to supervise lower courts. The appellate court went on to express surprise that Justice Lifu ignored the pending order of the Court of Appeal. The court described the action of Justice Lifu as what? Brazen disregard for judicial authority. It says this is clear brazen disregard of judicial authority. The panel further held that Justice Lifu's conduct amounts to what? Judicial rascality. That's what the panel further held, that it amounts to judicial rascality. Let me not explain what it means to be rascally in your behavior. Let me not explain. Let me allow you to be the ones to explain that. But this is the displeasure that the Court of Appeal expressed over the action and the conduct of Honorable Justice Lifu proceeding to deliver judgment and ask for the delisting of political parties despite dependency of the injunctive order of the Court of Appeal. Now, what's the implication? I have always said that you cannot win the argument in court when it has to do with disobedience of court order. What's the implication of this? The number one implication is that Justice Lifu's judgment stands suspended. It's frozen by the order of the Court of Appeal and stands suspended for now. It's in the cooler somewhere. 2, ADC, a court party, and the other parties that were to be affected by the judgment can proceed with their usual activities because there is no subsisting court order at the moment stopping them from existing and from doing what political parties should do. Governor Adeleke of Osun State will now have to go ahead. He can go ahead with his campaign and then prepare to present himself for election under the platform of a court party. I did my national service years back in Osun State. Peaceful state, but politically very conscious. Everybody, in fact, majority of the people there are very conscious politically. So Governor Adeleke, by this order, has nothing to fear. 3, INEC will not proceed to deregister the parties following the intervention of the Court of Appeal. 4, parties will have to wait for the further directive or order of the Court of Appeal. Note that this is not the end of the matter. An appeal is still pending before the Court of Appeal. The substantive appeal is still pending. What the Court of Appeal has done here is to preserve the subject matter from being destroyed. If you don't preserve it now, INEC goes ahead to deregister. Everybody's stranded in that political party. So why don't we freeze the order to allow the political parties to continue to exist while we now hear the substantive appeal? That's basically what the Court of Appeal has done here. Now you would ask, what's the message that the Court of Appeal is sending out by this intervention? Why is the Court of Appeal 24 hours, less than 24 hours after the delivery of the judgment, they now sat and made a pronouncement? Less than 24 hours. Okay, so what's the message? The message here sent by the Court of Appeal is that lower courts must at all times respect the authority. The highest court in Nigeria is the Supreme Court, followed by Court of Appeal, followed by State High Courts, followed by Magistrates Courts. Magistrates Courts must respect the authority of the State High Court. If the State High Court says, Magistrates Court, hold on, Magistrates Court is expected to hold on. That is this is elementary in law. If the State High Court or Federal High Court receives a message from the Court of Appeal saying, hold on, don't proceed, State High Court, Federal High Court, they have to hold on. If the Court of Appeal receives a message from the Supreme Court saying, hold on, don't proceed with that matter until we determine the appeal, Court of Appeal has no option. After all, no matter is personal to the court, so the court cannot even appeal against the order. Courts will simply stay action because the higher court has said, stay action. That is what Justice Lifu was expected to do in this matter, to stay action pending the determination of the appeal that is pending before the Court of Appeal. If he had done that, my Lord Justice Lifu would have spared himself the kind of description that the Court of Appeal made here, talking about judicial impertinence. He would have also spared himself the description of brazen disregard for judicial authority. He would have also spared himself of this phrase being used against him, judicial rascality. The days ahead will be quite interesting. We'll get to know exactly how this ends, and we'll get to know the fate of the political parties, and we'll get to know what the political space looks like as we build up to 2027 election. Many thanks always for watching.